in our lives? Well, here's a simple habit I do now. And so for years, I've actually been journaling since 1992. So I don't know, do the math. 30 some years. And I on a daily basis. And what do I do when I'm writing in my journal? I'm not like, dear diary, I've met some wonderful people today. I don't know. It's not me just talking about what I do. It's actually me asking God what I should be thinking, what I should be doing. And every day he gives me a download, just impresses upon my conscience. And so one of the exercises I do when I journal, probably on a weekly basis, at least once a week, I do what I call the realignment exercise. And I ask 3 simple questions. I kind of use it as like a guided meditation between me and God. God, what are my roles and goals that you would have for me? What one change would make the biggest difference, and what small habit would prove to you that I'm making that adjustment? Okay, so roles and goals. I always say, like, every human has multiple roles. For example, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an artist, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. All of those roles entail a different responsibility. Now, most people, when they think about their goals, they immediately think about their professional, vocational goals. And I say that should be the least of your concerns, of your goals or roles and goals. That should be the least. But the reason why I identify all of my roles in my life is because I want to think about my life holistically, right? Because success in one area does not compensate for failure in another. Right? I could be working out all the time as a steward of my physical body, but if I don't have time to be a parent, it's not gonna, who cares about having big muscles when your kids all try to kill you? You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I'm just giving you an analogy, okay? So you get the idea. Success in one area does not compensate for failure in another. So you gotta think holistically. So I always have big goals, and then I'm always asking every single week, how am I doing with that goal? Okay, and then what one change would make the biggest difference? In other words, if my marriage is lackluster or my parenting is clearly not working in some area, I just say, God, speak to me. What's the one thing that would make like 55% of the difference? The thing that would just make, just one adjustment. This is what I want you to do with your daughter. This is what I want you to do with your son. Like adjustments that I'm constantly making that would make the big difference. And then I always distill that idea into some sort of atomic habit, some sort of small habit that would prove to God I'm making the adjustment. And so let's say you're not reading your Bible ever, but you want to, and you're a spurt reader. You read really, really hard for like 1 week, and then you take a 6-month break. You know what I'm saying? How do you get consistent? Well, I always say you gotta establish a habit before you improve it. Just do a 2-minute habit. Read your Bible 2 minutes a day for 2 months until it becomes a natural addiction, okay? But how are you gonna get anything out of 2 minutes? Well, that's not the goal. The goal is to establish a habit. Now you wanna improve on it after 2 months. You turn it into a 4-minute Bible reading goal, and then you improve on it. You can't improve a habit you have not established. Does that make sense? And so if you start out too big with whatever it is, like healthy eating, my first habit is right before I eat my meal, I just take as much lettuce as I can and I jam it down my throat. I didn't have to like it. I didn't have to eat a salad. It was just my 2-minute habit. I can do it in 2 minutes, and then I eat slightly less pizza. Come on. Some of you, that's gonna change your life right there. I'm just saying, start small, okay? And here's the truth, church. You cannot have and do it all, but you can have and do the all that Christ has for you, that the Father has for you. And so you have to listen to the Father, and if you're not realigning on a regular basis, you're probably missing him. And it kind of reminds me, a while back, there was this research experiment that came out of Harvard where they recruited all these students to be guinea pigs. They were even like paid students for this test. And so they knew that they were going to be brought into this room and experimented upon. And they had a general sense that it's a lot of survey taking and weird puzzles and tests that they were going to be taking. But what they didn't know is the moment they would check in with the secretary or the administrator at the front desk, The administrator would start taking them to this testing room, but what they didn't know is that the psychological experiment had already begun the moment they came and talked at the front desk, because this is what would happen. Okay, so the secretary would start a conversation with them, and then the secretary would lead them down a hallway, which would presumably lead to the experiment room, not realizing they're already in it. And then what would happen is they coordinated it where the secretary would start walking faster, and then two maintenance men would just kind of walk into the hallway with a big door, crossing it like, coming through. And then they would block the secretary leading them and the group being led with this giant door, like, oh, sorry, my bad, just hold on, we're about to come through. And they would always just carry this big giant door. And then while they came through with the door, they would swap out the secretary with another person. And that person would resume the conversation they had just started with that group before the door entered, and they would just keep walking. And so it's a different human now finishing the conversation, leading them to this room. Now, once they were in the room, the weird survey would start asking them all these questions about the secretary that led them to the room. Like, did you notice anything? Were they blonde or brunette? Did you notice anything about their clothing? And did you notice anything changed with that person? And time after time after time, when they would do this experiment, no matter how many times they did it, well over 50% of the people never saw that the human was swapped out. It was a different human after the door than before. 50% every single time. And so they thought, well, how far can we take this? What they would do is they'd start swapping out the ethnicity of the secretary. And once again, only 50% of people noticed a change. They never even noticed the person leading them, having the conversation, switched ethnicities. And then they thought, well, let's switch gender and ethnicity. Let's switch gender, age, and ethnicity. And every time they did it, only 50% of people even noticed it happened. And then they did it where they were like, how about we do it where we call them on their cell phones while checking in? Like, let's distract them just one more step while they're walking back to the room, give them a strategic placed phone call. Only 10% of people noticed a change, okay? And then in the test room, they would ask them, how many of you would notice a change like that? And every time, 95% said, surely I would notice that. I'm not stupid. Well, turns out humans are, well, a little stupid, okay? So what they found with the study is not only do we miss massive changes between 90 to 50% of the time, but we also are in complete denial of how often we miss it. We think we are twice as self-aware as we actually are. Now, here's why I'm bringing up this phenomenon that's well studied, okay? It's particularly relevant, though, I think, when it comes to following God, when it comes to our schedules, our parenting, our priorities. Every single week, as a pastor, I have a front row seat to a lot of people's worst days and best days. And every single week, I hear Christians who weep, how did I never see it coming? In fill in the blank area of my life. How did I never see it coming, all of my kids walking away? How did I never see it coming, my spouse becoming addicted to drugs? How did I never see it coming, my marriage falling apart? And they're shocked over how the devil snuck in. But I would say, hey, listen, it can happen to all of us. Just like the people in that experiment, we overestimate our self-awareness when it comes to following Christ. As Christ was leading us through the hallways of life, somewhere along the way, a door got in the way, and our joy got swapped out with jealousy. Our marriages got swapped out with co-management. Our generosity got swapped out with gluttony. And next thing you know, we're all snuggled up to Satan with our hair on fire, wondering why it's hot. I can tell you, it's because it's easy to miss God. It's easy, and if we're not stopping and evaluating our lives, who we're truly being led by, our own flesh, the world, the devil, or Jesus, if we're not stopping and evaluating, I'm telling you, your detours are going to become more frequent, and they're going to last longer, and they're going to be way more painful. And so, church, here's the secret, okay? If you really want to do the realignment exercise effectively, I always say, do this exercise, but then add these 3 ingredients, okay? So you note takers, 3 ingredients that will amplify this exercise. It's these: get away, get outside, get inspired, okay? What does that mean? It's if you add these are like catalysts, they're like accelerators that will help you get into alignment with a greater frequency. For example, okay, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I listened to an audiobook called The 3-Day Effect. The 3-Day Effect. And it's basically all of this scientific research that talks about all the things that happen in your physical body when you spend time in nature. And it just has a huge impact on physiology. And so the author of this book was interviewing all these different scientists who study the 3-day effect. And what was the fascinating conclusion to the book is that research proves that when a human being spends 3 full days in nature, it causes a 50% boost in creativity. That people are generally way more astute and creative about troubleshooting and problem solving when they get into nature, when they withdraw. In fact, literally, they even did brain scans. They found that there was a huge shift in alpha brain waves, which caused a dramatic increase in cognitive function. So people, their capacity to do complicated math, complicated puzzles dramatically increased. But more specifically, there was also a boost in abstract thinking and just divergent problem solving just by being in nature. In fact, on top of that, just 2 to 3 days in nature lowered blood pressure, lowered inflammation in the body. It lowered stress hormones to a very dramatic, measurable, empirical degree. And some of these things, they only required about 1 to 2 days in nature, but they call it the 3-day effect because after 3 days, it's undeniable in multiple categories. And I'm not, and some of you are like, Pastor Peter, what are you saying? We should all go camping together? No, that's not what I'm saying. Some of you, that would probably raise your stress level. But I'm simply saying, really all I'm saying is this, because there's a million ways to actually, tap into these things. All I'm saying is this: what if Jesus had it right all along? Just go to solitary places. Get into a distraction-free environment. Allow your body to reset. Get into alignment with heaven and the Father's priorities. All I'm saying is, what if Jesus withdrawing to lonely, solitary places was, in fact, the key to change your current problem, your family, your finances, your physical body, your schedule?